Part 2. It's getting warm in here. I had to take the hat off, and I don't know where to put the hat, so I hung it over into my décolleté, also to cover up some stains. This is stained. I need to put it in the bleach bucket. So yeah, I want to get to the point that I mentioned already. I want to talk about this attempted murder case. I have seen different reports on this on YouTube, different crime report channels that have covered that story, and I have watched a movie that was a reenactment of this particular story of this girl that survived a murder attempt. And that's enormous, to survive something like this. Absolutely. I mean, just by a hair survived this. Because they got the murderer, the police, they already knew, they zoomed in on him. They got the murderer to make a confession, and it was just so that one of the main detectives and interrogators at the sheriff's office or law enforcement office, one of those guys was actually a cousin of that murderer, and they had the same grandmother, and that man was able to, because of this family situation, I don't know if I could call it a bond, but family interconnectedness, let's put it that way. He was able to get to the murderer in a psychological way, in a nice way, in a loving way. And that's also the only way we can at all interact with anyone. Because ultimately, if we look at it from the Sky perspective, the murderer is in a bad mental state, in a bad way. He is not well, okay? He suffers, obviously. And so this cousin, he was able to talk to him, and he was able to put him into a different mental state. And he told him, remember what our grandmother told us, she told us we need to be looking after each other, we need to be good to each other. Please tell us where you buried the girl. And so he finally, after that interrogation, I think he broke down crying, and he went with them into a remote forest, into a state park. They had to hike for, I don't know, a couple of miles or something, and he remembered where to get to that place. And he showed them the place, and they didn't see anything, and he said, she's buried under all of those leaves. And they dug her up, and they were able to carry her on a stretcher because she was completely unconscious, barely hanging on, was like a real slow heart rate, like barely heart beating, but the heart was beating. And I mean, incredible story. And they saw that he tried to choke her to death, so she had all those marks on her neck, and beaten. He beat her, and he caused her a whole lot of injuries, also brain injuries. So they got her into the hospital, into the ICU, and when she came back into consciousness, I think it took her several weeks to come back into consciousness. She was in a wake coma before that. Her whole body was like cramped up. She could not move her body. Horrible. This reenactment movie showed in detail what she had to go through when she went into the rehab. What this man has done to her is absolutely beyond words. And a real kind-hearted girl, sweet, loving girl, very down to earth. That's why he had such a crush on her. And so what really happened was they had an affair, even though she had another boyfriend. They had a brief affair, and then at some point she told him that she wasn't going to see him anymore and she was going back to her boyfriend because she really loves her boyfriend. And I guess they must have been in his car together when she told him that, which is dangerous to do. Don't ever say something like this to someone when you're alone with that person. Not a good idea. I mean, but she didn't know better. She trusted him. She thought that was her friend or one of her best friends. And when she told him that, they went to some kind of park where there were other people. Or I don't know exactly the details, whether he hit her there at that park, but that was a regular park where a lot of people go. So I think he hit her there. He yelled at her to get out of the car, and then he hit her down into the ground. And she was, I think she was just very beaten down. At that point, he put her back in his car and then drove her to that state park where, yeah, that's what he did. He beat her down where she was already unconscious in the first park, and then he brought her to the state park where he was hoping that nobody would find her there. And he dragged her body to that place where I think he then choked her and hit her and kicked her again, and then buried her under the leaves and then left. So that's what happened. So he could absolutely not handle the rejection, and it must have been just for this person, cluster B, psychopath, must have been so unbelievably, it must have been such a horror for him to be rejected by this girl that he was fixated on, that this rejection was worse than death. This rejection to him, I'm just looking at explaining it from his mind state and perspective. For him it must have been worse than torture, worse than physical torture even, for him. Okay, now that's the kind of mind state that some of these people are in. I'm trying to uncover this. I'm trying to bring this up to the surface for people. I have been researching cluster B my whole life because it has always puzzled me how people can get into such mind states. But I got to the core of it now. It's all very, very straightforward and simplistic. It seems like the majority of men can absolutely not handle a rejection from a woman or girl. This is so bad that this sparked this entire incel community, the MGTOW community, men going their own ways, which they don't, obviously. They're always fixated on women. They're not going their own ways. They're certainly not going out with another man because they're straight, okay? Gay men would never join something like this in the first place. Gay men are not fixated on women, so I think that would be unbelievably rare for a gay man to ever murder a woman. So it's straight men who are not right in their heads. I'm not saying that straight is not right. I don't want to be misunderstood. Neither straight or gay, there's neither one is something wrong with it. But it's the incel community that consists of fully straight men who have this idea about themselves, this idea that they have been given by peers, by family members, particularly male family members, this idea of needing to be tough, needing to be badass, needing to be a devil worshipper, or needing to, the blue god agrees with me, needing to be mean, as the equate mean with masculine. These kind of ideas that come from neurosis, that are not based on truth. Okay, so, and this is what I'm seeing. And so this combination, upbringing with shame and humiliation from their fathers that are also not well, then also genetics comes in. It goes much farther. It goes into trauma that we can actually inherit in our DNA. Okay, this has come out to the surface through science. And then I also go into reincarnation as well. And I look at that from that perspective, and I see that the majority of souls that reincarnate or incarnate maybe for the first time, they are not prepared. They are baby souls, okay? They're completely new souls that are coming into existence and that don't know how to handle anything in life, okay? Any kind of emotions. And who they don't understand that you can't be letting out your anger on other people, on innocent beings. They don't understand that someone else has the right to say, I am going back to my other boyfriend, So they can only see this from their own personal hurt perspective. And that's so dangerous, This is so incredibly dangerous. I have been very angry, and I get very angry sometimes when I talk to psychopaths, because of the way they are so knuckleheaded in their own self-centered perspective. Very, very knuckleheaded, to the point of making other people very, very angry. Okay, very angry. And you would just want to take your knuckle and hit them right into the prefrontal cortex. But that's not a good idea, because they need a little bit of prefrontal cortex processing that they still have. Okay, that's what also. What's the problem is, Dr. Robert Sapolsky talked about this at Stanford, that in cluster B personalities, the prefrontal cortex is actually short-circuited, and it's a fight or flight reaction loop from the hippocampus to the amygdala back and forth. But in terms of total panic, like someone running out of a burning building and trampling down on other people while they're running out of that only door. And so this is a very well observed phenomenon, and obviously this is also being observed just simply in terms of psychology and in terms of social interactions and what happens to an incel type of man who is feeling rejected and is then in this knee-jerk reaction of fight or flight, which is fight in his case, and he just mercilessly beats up his girlfriend. Okay. And this is happening at an epidemic level worldwide. Okay, and that's why I talk about this, because I'm very deeply concerned about it. Okay, so we have not addressed the core issues of all of this. People, they give them drugs, they put them into a prison, high security prison. We're not far from a high security prison here. And when we drive back and forth, always driving past this high security prison, and sometimes I look at it and I'm like, this is not run well. Okay, this is oftentimes people are being released into the communities that are surrounding this prison, and then they continue to commit crimes. So what needs to happen is we need to convert all prisons into cluster B therapy centers and cluster A therapy centers. Okay, it's very, very important. This is an urgent situation that we have right now. And cluster A and cluster B often merges, and there are mixes of both. Cluster A is schizoid personality disorder. Cluster B is all of the criminal mental disorders. If you ask a psychiatrist or a modern scientist, they will say those are not mental illness forms. This is genetic. They did lots of studies on this, and Dr. Adrian Rain did a lot of study on violent prisoners. He has a van with an fMRI machine in it, and he drives from prison to prison, and he puts these people into that machine because he is studying what's going on inside of their brains. And he said they have different brain anatomical proportions. So the amygdala formation is atrophied in violent criminals. So the amygdala formation, which are two almond-shaped formations, the brain has always like a pair, okay, of everything, of almost everything, because it is a form of balanced organ. It's very, very amazing. And so when the amygdala, when these almond-shaped formations, when they are very well developed and large, the person has a lot of compassion. The person feels empathy for another. The person is able to put herself into someone else's shoes and see life from that other person's perspective. And a person like that could never hurt someone else, no matter how jealous she is of another girl, or no matter how another girl has humiliated her or triumphed over her or got her boyfriend, or it wouldn't matter what the other girl or other person did to her, she would never retaliate, or she would never hurt that other person because of the large amygdala formation. And there are some other areas in the brain that also play into it. It's very complex. It's not very simple, of course. The brain has gone through incredible mutations throughout evolution. So we still actually have the reptilian brain formation at the brain stem, actually. So the salamander brain and all of that, these things have not completely reinvented themselves. They have just basically evolved in a way where other things were suddenly occurring on top of the old formation. So, and that can also cause a lot of problems later on, because we still have, our brains are basically still wired in the way that they were pretty much wired 50, 100,000 years ago, when people were hunters and gatherers. Our modern era has come at a very, very fast sprint for quite a fraction of a time compared to evolution on Earth. So people can't really keep up brain-wise with what is happening to our modern living situation. That's why people are obese on the computer. That's why one person winning a computer game over another is then murdered by the other one who had lost. Or the woman is being murdered and choked to death because of that rejection, and so on and on and on. Always ego is being hurt, ego is bruised. This happens usually from men. Men have a way, way higher proportion of murders, okay? But there are some women, this is much more rare, but there are some women, and I've seen reports on this, there are some women that murder another woman out of jealousy. And those are psychopaths as well. And they don't have the amygdala very developed. And this jealousy, which is never ever addressed to anyone, never talked about, always choked down inside of their own minds. And instead of even walking away from that other woman that they're jealous of, they stay with that other woman in a friendship or whatever. Sometimes involuntarily, because they're going to the same school together and they see that beautiful girl they're jealous of every single day. They never talk about it to anyone, not even to their mothers or fathers. Because society, and this is a real big one here, society has silenced people in terms of talking about how they actually feel. Not only silenced them, they have shamed and humiliated people in this regard. You're not allowed to talk about anyone. You're not allowed to talk about how you feel. You're not allowed to talk about how you're jealous and what this jealousy feeling feels like, and they're not allowed to cry, and men in particular, are not allowed to cry, and it's still going on with Islam. It's exponentialized, If we have made some headway now in our Western culture, then that's just going to be overturned by the wave of immigrants from the cultures that have not done this mental evolution, and they will turn the clock back into crucifixion and witch hunt They want to bring us back to the Inquisition. That is what they really want to do. And it's sad to see, the time turned back by 400 years in terms of psychological development. That's sad to see for me as a non-militant feminist. So very sad to see. So yeah, and that's why I talk about this, because this is very dear to my heart, all of these subjects. These are subjects that my brain is literally about and onto it 24 hours per day. Literally, it goes into my dreams. Even last night, this morning too, like all night long, every time I go to the bathroom, I'm like, oh, what I was dreaming again, I'm like giving lectures in my dream. I'm trying to wake the public up. I do what I can to say, look at it, look at psychology. Let's understand the situation. Let's understand how urgent the situation is, that we need therapy help centers. We need 4 therapy help centers. 3 of them closed. Donald Trump suggested for California to round up the homeless people. Those are cluster A. They're a danger to themselves and others. Many of them are merging with cluster B. Many cluster Bs that are an absolute emergent danger to other living beings. Animals, children, elderly people. They are let out on the street, revolving door, coming back into prison, being let out. So why do you even let them go through the revolving door then? Just don't do anything then, basically. I mean, that's kind of like what they're doing already. They're not doing anything. I agree with Governor Newsom that incarceration is cruel. But the alternative that I suggest, he would never accept, which is euthanasia. Okay, but Donald Trump didn't suggest euthanasia. That's just, I'm saying this because I have a very, very way out there, and I am not a politician. I'm not trying to get anyone to subscribe to me. So I just say it the way I really see it. I'm not holding back. Okay, so but Donald Trump suggested something very reasonable to do for Governor Newsom to mandate that cluster A people and cluster B people be rounded up and put into care facilities, whether they want it or not, and not be released back onto the streets, but be put into care facilities. That he didn't mean like small prison cells or something. That could be different. That could be like a psych ward where people share a large room with others, and they are put together with others according to their personality, and they're being monitored, and they also get exercise, and they have like a large compound to go with a supervisor to go hiking and so on. That's what we really need. Okay. Prison cells, that's cruel. Okay, I'm absolutely against any kind of incarceration or caging of any living being. I want to make this very crystal clear. Any kind of prison cell or kennel or crate or confinement of a whale in an amusement park pool, or a dog in a kennel or crate, or prisoner in a prison is cruel and unethical and needs to be outlawed. Again, in a regular state governmentally run animal shelter that are flooding over with animals, with dogs, with pit bulls in particular, like him. He was on death row. Good Samaritan rescued him, brought him up north, and so that we got to see him and take him home. Okay. And now that's an angel song. Why are they flowing over with dogs, particularly like him? Is because of cluster B men, okay, that are breeding these dogs to do dog fighting. The ones that don't do dog fighting end up in the animal shelter. He's one of them that don't do dog fighting. He refuses to do dog fighting. And the reason why is because he has an advanced soul. He's the God level soul. He would never do something like this. He's real nice to other dogs, even if other dogs are not nice to him. So, what do they have to do? Unfortunately, they have to euthanize dogs that are not passing the rubber hand test. What's the rubber hand test? They put a rubber human hand on a stick into a dog bowl while the dog's eating. If the dog bites the hand, the dog is going to be euthanized. Okay? And they have no other choice. They can't adopt a dangerous dog out to a family. Maybe sometimes they have children and so on. So, I mean, that should go without saying. Why don't we do the same rubber hand test now with humans? Okay? I tell you why we don't do that with humans. Because of religion and indoctrination. Religion is indoctrinating people to think that the human is somehow in some kind of God's image. It doesn't matter if that's a cluster B, total rabid psychopath. He is in the image of whatever, Jesus Christ, Oh, please don't even compare. But yeah, that's what people think, and then they put the human on a pedestal and they think, no way we can do a rubber hand test with the human. No, the human blah 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 Bible verses. Okay, so, or whatever the Quran says, or the Torah, or whatever religious book. I think the vast majority of religions are very human-centric. And wrongfully so, okay? The human is not on some kind of pedestal, and particularly not a psychopathic human, okay? A psychopathic human is a dangerous thing. That's a dangerous parasitic entity, okay? That's how I view it, okay? And if we want to make the world a better place, these people need to be euthanized. All of these psychopaths need to be euthanized. Sorry, it is what it is. I'm not saying this out of anger. I say this out of love for the innocent beings in this world. Okay? And someone needs to say it. Someone has to say it. Someone has to talk about it. Because I don't see anyone talking about it. So people are too afraid to lose their customers or their subscribers. Whoever does or wants to talk about it, which is like a fraction of the human population. I think I'm like at least 1 in a million, if not 1 in 10 million, who dares to talk about this. So, or maybe I'm 1 in 10 million who even lets the brain go in that direction. Okay, so, because we have been brainwashed, let's face it, we have been brainwashed for hundreds of years. So, and then everything is also, the Nazi regime is brought up by people, and that's worse than hell, that's worse than the devil and all of that. People are brainwashed. So, and if we want to make the world a better place, if we want to make this place, this planet safe for every single person, so that you can go for walks with your dog, okay? So that a teenage girl can walk down the street and visit her friend, her best friend, without having to be shivering in terror of being murdered. Of being murdered by a jealous sister of her friend, which all happened. Okay. Or murdered by a jealous boyfriend or by a predator man or whatever. So we need to get rid of these people. We need to get rid of psychopaths. It's time. It really is time. But besides all of this, besides this fact that we need to get rid of psychopaths, I do want to dive into the why. I do want to dive into the causality of things, because I am not okay with saying, oh, those are just bad people, let's get rid of them. That's not good enough. We do have to get rid of them. There's no doubt about it. Okay, they're dangerous. But, as I talked about this before, the Vipassana meditation by S.N. Goenka, that is a compassion healing meditation. And this meditation has been implemented and had been mandated by an amazing mayor, a lady, of course, in India. And she mandated this meditation to be conducted in all the high security prisons, or I think in all prisons in her community in India. And it had a huge success. It helped people to calm down their brains. Again, those cluster B people are not well. They may look like they're composed on the outside. They may even look like they're totally calm. And there was a guy who was very courageously talking about this to Owen Cook. Owen Cook, who is trying to help men in this way. Owen Cook is an amazing therapist. He's doing exactly that what I'm talking about. Okay, an amazing guy, Owen Cook. I would love to work with him. I'm not throwing you. And we need people like Owen Cook to help people in the prison population. We need therapies like this, like those that Owen Cook is doing with his seminars and workshops of empowerment, self-empowerment, becoming successful and so on. But it really starts with your mind state. And what is necessary is this introspection process. And he had a Native American guy there on stage one time. I will never forget this. A young guy, a kid like 20 or something. And Owen Cook was trying to get these people to do these certain brain exercises. And the Native American guy said to Owen Cook, I know I look calm on the outside. I look like I'm totally disinterested in everything, like totally oblivious and like almost to the point of rudeness, like what the heck, like I don't care what anyone says. I stand here and I can never be hurt, I don't care about anything. He said this is a complete facade. And he even talked about it to the point where he said this is not just a psychological facade. This is actually genetic. And this happens a lot, apparently, with Native American people. Most Native American people are already mixed in with other demographics, of course, with other ethnicities. But some people have a very, very large percentage of Native American, and I've observed that as well. And they have this appearance on the outside of being completely unbothered by anything. Like they're the chillest and the most annoyed and bored of all, but it is a facade. And I would say, and this brings me to this research that Dr. Vilayanu Ramachandran at UC San Diego has done with in the field of neurology, neuroscience. He's discovered something very, very fundamental. He's discovered anosognosia, which is, I don't know if he came up with this term or this research in general, but this is scientifically now a very well studied and observed phenomenon. Anosognosia not only happening in humans, of course, we've come from other animal forms, and we are related to all animals on this planet. When deer are feeling very, very frightened, and when they see a predator approaching, and when they know they cannot sprint away in time because they may have a foot injury, what they do is they go into an anosognostic state. They start to act like nothing wrong. They just peacefully walk over lawn, grazing. And a lot of predator animals are actually running after animals when the animals are starting to run away. So that's also very well observed. If an animal that is smaller than the predator animal, for example, or doesn't have the muscle power or the sprinting power or whatever, when the prey animal is actually confronting the predator animal steps back. Okay, I've observed that with my own eyes. My papa dog, the European Basset Hound we had, he met a deer boy on our lawn and at the other house in the garden. The deer boy apparently had lost his mother, probably to a hunter. And the deer boy was in our garden. He wasn't injured, but he was extremely lonely. And he wanted to make friends with the papa. Papa had the same hair color also. But he was nervous about the papa because he could see and smell that, obviously, even though that dog looks very short and has the color of a deer, that dog smells like a predator animal, okay, with that musky predator animal smell, and that dog has canines, and that dog is making some very fast movements here and there, okay. So the deer boy was very nervous about the papa, but he didn't know what he should do, run away or stay, because he was so lonely and he wanted a friend. And the papa, angel soul, was only interested in making friends. But the deer baby, through an entire evolution, of course, and there comes the genetic memory, was nervous about the papa because he knew the papa comes from the canine family, subconsciously knowing, not consciously knowing like a scientist, right? So, but subconsciously, intuitively, that's his instinct he smells a canine and they have this musky smell and he is going into fight or flight. So, but the loneliness took over and won, and so the papa would stop and the papa would actually walk back a little bit, and then the deer boy would walk towards the papa because he felt safe, because he wanted to make friends. But as soon as the papa would step just some few steps forward, even slowly, the deer boy would retract. So that's very much built into the fear and all of this. But in the wild, and that happens occasionally, if an animal, particularly a mother animal, feels threatened by a predator, and she has the babies there in a nest, and this is a stationary situation, she can't just spontaneously move these kids to another location and run far away from the predator. So the predator is there next to her den, and the mother doesn't know what to do, so the mother can't run away in that situation. And so the mother will actually confront the predator. So this happens, of course, a lot among predator animals themselves, where a cat or a bobcat or mountain lion or any kind of feline type of mother animal has a den with babies, and a dog comes along or a larger cat comes along, and she will go into defending the babies and protecting the babies by confronting that predator animal. And she doesn't understand, sometimes there could be a human walking by, but she doesn't understand that the human has absolutely no interest in her babies. But she doesn't understand that and might attack a person, a hiker or mountain bike rider or whatever, whoever happens to be there in that. A woman crying over her boyfriend who broke up with her, going into the forest, happening to slump down not far from that mountain lion's nest. So the mother doesn't understand what that woman's going through. The mother feels threatened and might confront that woman, okay? And the woman has no idea why the mountain lion mother is doing that, if she doesn't know anything about biology. And if she gets up and runs away, then the mountain lion mother will tear her down. Because when another animal runs away, they run after them, because that is their predatory instinct, because then they know that other being is a prey animal. So that's what kicks in then. But if the woman stays there like a Buddha, and that's what the Buddha apparently has done in a jungle, stays there in her lotus seat position with a straight back and the hands on her knees, or even hands up like this. That's the friendship, Native American friendship sign also, the open hand like this. I do this here when I see an animal coming at me angrily. So, and the most amazing things happen when you do that. But not just do that and still have fear in that. No. You have to completely get rid of the fear in the head. You have to completely tune in to that other living being. And that is easier said than done for people who are in a perpetually clenched and fight or flight mind state. That's why a lot of criminals are afraid of our baby dog, because a lot of cluster bees they make a huge circle around him, because they know instinctively that they themselves are in a fight or flight. And they are afraid that a pit bull dog like that could pick up on their fear and might come after them. So, but if you put yourself into a mental state of tuning in with that other living being, you become one with that other living being. Okay, that's what the Buddha does. Then that other living being is very puzzled at first and will stop and just look at you with curious, wide open eyes. And you keep on feeling that other living being. I feel you. I know how you feel. I know how you feel. You feel threatened. You feel like your babies are threatened. You feel like you are in a fight or flight. You are afraid of me. You haven't seen me before. You think every human is a hunter. Okay, so of course I tune myself in. And I've done that once. That was a very scary situation. I was in a bad mental state. Not only was I in a neutral mental, not only was this a situation that was neutral, I was walking across a real wide beach in Oregon after having had an argument with Paul. And he was there with our former dog Samantha, and I left him there. I said, I'm going back to the motorhome. We were still living in the motorhome at that time. And I was dressed, when we were living in the motorhome, I was dressed completely, just completely, like, with dark, manly clothes and men type of jackets, and I wasn't doing anything for my appearance at all. I didn't put nail polish on. The 3 years in the motorhome were rough, and I was just living that rough lifestyle and just barely trying to make it from one shower opportunity to the next, So I was walking across that big, wide, open beach back to the motorhome, to the parking lot, and as I was walking from the shoreline, dressed in men's clothes, dark men's clothes, with my wide shoulders and big body and all of that, there was a woman coming from the parking lot with 2 Rottweilers. A woman alone, dressed very feminine, with a kind of like a petite, kind of older woman, probably terrified to death. She thought I was a man coming across that beach, but she had her 2 Rottweilers to protect her, and the Rottweilers could instantly feel her fear. So she didn't even say anything to the Rottweilers. The Rottweilers came charging at me across the entire beach. At me, and I had read that book by Marlo Morgan, an American physician who studied the Aborigines. She went to Australia and walked with Aborigines into the natural environment, and they taught her something very, very important. She reported on that in her book. They taught her that the Aborigines, when they were invaded by the 1800s European settlers that were actually headhunting the native people, just as they have done in the United States and in the Americas in general. Those Aborigines, they had a technique of making themselves invisible. Okay, that's the word they used. And then obviously they're not becoming invisible. They're still there, but what they do is they stand there like a tree, and they have their hands also up like this, like the Joshua tree, or have the hands out like this. And they do that, and they tune themselves in to the predator, into the attacker, into that headhunter. And whether they get killed or not, they tune themselves into the headhunter. And they make themselves feel one with that settler from Europe, settler men that are coming after them. And he just makes them, those Aborigines people, they make themselves feel unconditional love for those headhunters. And in numerous of those occasions, the headhunters did not see those meditating Aborigines. Believe it or not. I believe it. This is the most amazing thing. So I have read that book not long before that happened to me with the Rottweilers. And I did just that. And that was easy for me. I love dogs. And I don't blame dogs for whatever mental state they're in. So it was very easy for me to do. I was very prepared because I read Marlo Morgan's book. She saved my life with that book, for sure. And I put my hands out there, the gesture of friendship, and in the highest pitched girly voice, I said to them, babies, I love you, and they were like, what the fuck? They stood like they were running and stood. They came to a standstill abruptly, like 10 feet in front of me. And both of them at the same time, looking and staring at me like they're seeing a ghost. And I kept on assuring them. I said, I love you, and what's going on? And they turned around on the spot and ran back to the woman as fast as they had come. Because they did not expect me to be a woman with a girly voice, loving like this, and all unconditionally loving them and all of this. So because they were literally running in a momentum of body and mind of fight or flight, and so to see that suddenly, this totally different mind state, that was almost like a shock to them. But they don't want to hurt someone who's innocent. Dogs don't want to hurt an innocent being. So they were very, very amazed. And they just turned around and ran back to the woman. And then the woman walked the other direction with them. And I calmly, very, very calmly, walked across the beach and to the motorhome. And I was not afraid at all. But I cried rivers. I cried rivers for many reasons. Because of the fight with Paul, and because of Marlo Morgan's book saving my life, because of having the ability to feel unconditional love makes me cry in gratitude. And it is a real present to have. And when I'm in that mindset, I can look at everyone from the sky perspective and see everyone exactly where they are. And I don't judge at all. Okay. So I want to make this very, very clear in my videos that I am not a Hitler, I'm not a Goebbels, I'm not a Kim Jong-un, I'm not a dictator, I'm not a cold person or something or whatever, or New World Order or whatever people will they will interpret if they hear someone talk in such nuanced way about law enforcement and incarceration and management of violent criminals. So I want the Vipassana approach. I want all of this. I want Owen Cook approach. I want Tony Robbins, Teal Swan, all of these good people, okay, J.P. Sears. I want all of these people that are contributing to helping people, to empowering people, to make the world a better place, to help people, particularly in psychiatric wards and prisons. But we have to have a reform on this. These people cannot go back on the streets. That we cannot do, okay? We have to have a reform in the prison system. We have to have much more monitoring going on. The therapists and the social workers and the prison guards and the psych guards, all of these people must also attend a group therapy session every single day. Every single person. You are not exempt from it, because you take your mental illness into your own profession. And that is not a good thing to do. We've seen this now many times. We've seen fights breaking out between prison guards and prisoners. We've seen police officers becoming too aggressive. We've seen all of this happening. But the person that is, I have to say this here, the person that is being put in solitary confinement, the police officer who had to restrain George Floyd, that police officer is wrongfully detained. I have to say this here, okay? George Floyd and many other people that resist the arrest, that fight an arrest, viciously fight an arrest, where the criminal is way bigger than the police officer. The police officers are scared to death. They have to take a measure to restrain a criminal who is resisting arrest. Okay, this is very important that people understand this. This police officer is wrongfully detained, and he is wrongfully imprisoned in solitary confinement, which is torture. Okay, I have to say this. And there are people out there who have dug into that story. Please watch that documentary film by Candace Owens. Okay, she interviewed the people that George Floyd lived with, and he told these people, like a day before this happened, he told these people, they are after me, they're coming after me, they want me dead. Who wanted him dead? The corporate agenda, so that they can sacrifice George Floyd to make him look to the public like someone from that Black Panther era 70s, whatever, when they were still, when Malcolm X, when those people, they were actually standing up for justice, you know. So they want to twist, the corporate agenda wants to twist this and make it look like this is something that comes straight from that era of actual justice fighting, which it wasn't. This man was actually, he was chosen by the corporate agenda to be sacrificed to create this fake situation. And as Candace Owens said, it was confirmed that he later died in the hospital. He didn't even die from any injury. He wasn't even injured by that police officer. So who killed him? Those are questions to look after, but most people wouldn't look after because they want their storyline. Okay, they want that. They identify with that corporate storyline. Okay, the corporate agenda just exploits those people to the fullest. This has to be said. Okay, but again, nobody should be incarcerated. No George Floyd should be incarcerated, and no police officer who had to do his work should be incarcerated in any way. Okay, so this, I want to make this very crystal clear, and we need to look at the facts of things and not run off with a fake storyline that is being propagated to you by mass media. Okay, so keep this in mind now. I want the truth. I want justice. I am a justice promoting activist. Okay, you guys take care. Peace and love.